wants these videos.
Anyway.
No one wants the videos
Okay.
on.
Turn your video on. I'd love to see you if you have anything to say. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Yonina Jacobson. We're good. I'm actually stepping out of my comfort zone, and I'm talking about the Gemara and relationships between different Rabbanim and the Gemara. I usually am straight up Tanakh. So you'll have to excuse if I read something in Aramaic wrong, and I'd love for anybody here who is better at it to read instead of me. And this should be very interactive. I have questions about this, and I hope you do too. And I hope we all come away from this learning something. So the topic of the shiur is We Are Not Amused, the relationship between Rabbi Yermiah and Rabbi Zeira and what we can learn from it. And these are two individuals who I've met kind of throughout some of my studies in the Gemara, and I found them particularly fascinating, and some anecdotes about their relationships to be particularly fascinating. So I'll start off by talking a little bit about Rabbi Zeira. Both Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Zeira came from Bavel and came to Israel, which in and of itself was a big deal, not just because of the trip, but because there was a real rivalry, as we know, between Bavel and Israel. And don't think that everybody thought that what was being learned in Israel was better. A lot of the people in Bavel thought that was really where the Torah lay. So Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yermiah and Rabbi Zeira both came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. And I'll just remind some of you of some of the stories of Rabbi Zeira, or tell you some of the stories of Rabbi Zeira if you don't know about them. Many of you might remember Rabbi Zeira from his deathly Purim experience, where Rava actually killed him at one Purim Suda. He was revived, and he decided that he wasn't going to do Purim Suda with Rava the following year because he didn't want to have that experience again. Some of you might know him from the Chumrah with Rabbi Zeira, which is why nowadays we always add an additional 5 days with Hilchot Nida. That's the Chumrah de Rabbi Zeira, which basically knocks 80% of Masechet Nida out. You don't even need it. And some of you might know the following story, which is the first story on your screen. Anybody want to read? Okay, I'll read. And I'll do some of the stuff in Hebrew, and then we'll do some of the stuff in English. That's okay with everybody. All right, so this is in Bava Metzia, Hey Amud Aleph. Rabbi Zeira kisalik la'arad Yisrael yativ mea ta'anite delish tachach gemara bavla'a mine. He decided to undertake 100 fasts so that he'd forget the Torah from Bavel because hechi delo natra day, so that it wouldn't kind of like slow him down from learning in Eretz Yisrael. Yativ mea ach ranita delo lishkov Rabbi Elazar b'sheina v'naflin aluya iluye mile detzibura. He also fasted another 100 fasts so that Rabbi Elazar would live, so that the burden of answering the questions of the tzibur wouldn't fall on him. V'yativ mea achrine delo nishlot be nura deganim, and another 100 so that the fires of hell wouldn't hit him. And this is the next part, which is kind of famous. So then the following story happens. Kol taltin yome have badik nafshe. Every 30 days he would kind of check himself to see if he is still at a very high level. Shagar tanura salik v'yativ begabe v'lo have shalta benura. He would go into an oven, he'd climb in, he wouldn't get burned, and he'd come out. The other one time he got the evil eye from the other chachamim because they were kind of thinking that this is out of control, and he got singed, and he started to be, and then from then on he was called v'karulei katin charich shakiye. I'm going to see this wrong. Shakiye. That he was the person, the short guy with the singed leg. So this is a guy, or this is a Rav, who fasts all the time, who tests himself by going into a furnace, which we know only one. I know 2 other stories about going into furnaces in Tanakh. Who has a chumrah named after him, not just one, but that's his famous one. So he is really somebody who is pretty out there, pretty on the edge, pretty machmir, pretty harif. His Talmud is Rabbi Yochanan. Sorry, Yeah, I mean, he does love Rabbi Yochanan, but we're not talking about him. Rabbi Yermiah. Rabbi Yermiah is a completely different figure. And we're going to talk about Rabbi Yermiah and their relationship between the two of them and kind of whether or not we think it works. Anybody have any questions? I can't really see. Okay, here we go. All right. So let's turn to the next source, okay? And I guess since I'm nervous, I'm reading Aramaic. It's not really working very well, so I'm going to actually do most of this in English because I think that'll be better. So Rabbi Yermiah, so in Brachot Lamed, we see a story that goes as follows. It's not really a story. There's a discussion about kavana and having kavana and davening and having the right frame of mind and not to have too much levity. And in that area, in there, Rabbi Zeira was talking often, and he says, and he's way on the don't smile too much, don't have too much levity. It's never a good idea to have too much levity. So Rabbi Yermiah comes, and this is where we're gonna pick up. And it says Rabbi Yermiah have yatev kame de Rabbi Zeira. Rabbi Yermiah was sitting in front of Rabbi Zeira. Chaze de have ka badach tuva, and he was too happy, having too much fun. Okay. Amar le, this is Rabbi Zeira said, B'chol etzev yehei motarkti. Don't you understand, says Rabbi Zeira, that in every sorrow there's profit, that it's appropriate. You shouldn't have excessive joy, that you should always be a little bit sad. You should always be a little bit sad. Rabbi Yermiah said to him, tefillin manachna. Don't worry, I put on tefillin. Now this is coming from beforehand because there was a discussion that if you put on tefillin, it puts you in the right frame of mind, and so you can be happy because you would be tempered because you'd be remembering because you have tefillin on. But this is Rabbi Yochanan. He's a happy guy. Okay. Next story. This is the story in Nida, which is a really funny, interesting story. Okay. So anybody want to read, please? Somebody. All right. All right. So this is the story. This is the story in Nida, which is I find really fascinating. Which was the first thing that really kind of tipped me off.
Joni, scroll your screen up so we can see the next.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yikes. Thank you. Sorry. Here we go. That was Brachot. Here we go to Nida. Okay. All right. So this is a story that first kind of alerted me to the relationship between the two of these two rabbanim. All right. Ba'minei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zeira Rabbi. Oh, sorry. Let me give you the background. This is talking about Rabbi Meir has come in there and talked about what happens if a woman gives birth to a fetus that doesn't look like, or that is an animal that looks like an animal, and they're kind of going with a back and forth of whether or not the halachot of giving birth are going to apply. Okay, so then Rabbi Zeira, so this is Rabbi Zeira is going to come in now. Ba'minei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zeira, Rabbi Meir, the Amar behema me'ei isha vlad me'ilehu. Okay, ma'al yehu. Okay, so he says, okay, so let's talk about the scenario that Rabbi Meir talks about, that a woman has a child, not a child, that looks like an animal or is an animal. Okay, so let's talk about, this is the situation. This is the rubric that we're talking about. Kabel, this is his scenario. This is what he says. Kabel be aviha kiddushin. Kiddushin mahu? What do we do if this man decides that he's going to betroth, basically decide that give this child up for betrothal if it's a female? What are we going to do with that? Okay, obviously this is quite an interesting scenario. Okay, Lamai nafkamina, like, what are you even talking about, right? What is the difference? Why does this make a difference? Li'itzurei ba'achota. It makes a difference, says Rabbi Yermiah, because a woman is not allowed to marry someone who was engaged to her sister. So if this is actually considered her sister, so then this guy would never be able to be engaged to this person's sister. Okay. Do you think that this thing would be living? Okay, this thing that was a woman gave birth to something that's an animal that would actually live. V'hamar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav lo Amar Rabbi Meir ela hoil gmino mitkayim. This would only be a case if there would be if this kind of animal or the thing would actually be able to live, but this isn't even a possibility here. Okay, Amar Rabacha bar Yaakov. Ad kan hiviu Rabbi Yermiah leRab Zeira lidei gichuch v'lo gichech. What was the purpose of this whole thing? The whole purpose was so that, let me see if you guys can see this here. It says, he says the whole reason that Rabbi Yermiah did this for Rabbi Zeira was so that he would laugh and he didn't laugh. And I thought this was really fascinating, okay? That Rabbi Yermiah is giving this whole outlandish scenario because he wants to make his teacher laugh, which, I mean, some of us may have children who have that type of proclivity, so you can understand that type of personality, but to see that in the Gemara is pretty interesting. So Rashi comes down on that. Let me see. That's over here. Lidei gichuch, schok, that he would laugh, okay? B'chol tachbulot halalu asak Rabbi Yermiah lehavi Rabbi Zeira lidei schok, below sichek. De'asor la'adam sheyimalei piv schok v'Rabbi Zeira machmir tapi. Rashi says, okay, well, what was he trying to do? He's trying to make him laugh, and he didn't laugh because Rabbi, as we saw earlier with that whole thing with the tefillin, Rabbi Zeira doesn't believe that people should be laughing, and he's very machmir about that. So again, we have this setup of Rabbi Zeira and Rabbi Yermiah, where Rabbi Yermiah is trying to get is having this kind of push-pull with his Rebbe. The Baal Aruch Laner, which is over here, which I only brought in Hebrew, I didn't find it in English, says the following. Says, "In Cain, lama ratza Rabbi Yermiah laviu lidei schok." But why did he want to make him laugh? Why is this his purpose? Al pi ma shekatuv bezohar, d'schok b'divrei Torah shari. Because you're allowed to laugh. Because the Zohar says, and if you're learning Torah in particular, you're allowed to have that level of levity. And that's why Rashi said that he's machmir, because actually this is a halacha that you don't have to be so makpid on, but he's very makpid on. Perusho shelo ratzah lischok gan kain al divrei Torah, even on divrei Torah. The lazet lo chash Rabbi Yermiah, but Rabbi Yermiah didn't get that, didn't understand that, and he kept on pushing because he didn't get that about his Rebbe. And he wanted to bring him to laugh, but he couldn't. But he couldn't, and he wasn't going to, and he didn't understand that. Okay, now comes the next. Any questions? I can't. Okay, I guess write in the chat if you have any questions. Okay, now we're going to talk about the next part, which is probably where everybody, if you know about Rabbi Yermiah, you probably know about him from here. This is a famous story with Rabbi Yermiah. I'll back it up by saying Rabbi Zeira appears in this story, but he appears earlier. He makes comments earlier in the story. There's an assumption that he's in the base medrash at this time when this thing is happening, but you don't see that he's the person that does what you're about to hear. Okay? And there's a so the discussion, I'm just going to back it up. I'll just tell you in English. We're dealing here with a situation where a pigeon, an animal, a bird, a chick, is found away from it's found away from its dovecote. Dovecote meaning the place where it's found away from a dovecote, which is where they hold chickens. Okay, and the question is, who's the owner? The thing that the thing that owns the dovecote, or the person who found the chicken, or I'm calling it a chicken, the pigeon, or whatever this bird is. And and there's a back and forth about kind of who it would be, whether, and it comes down to the discussion about how it's a question of proximity to the dovecote and not the size of it. So like if you would find it, would you find a big dovecote that's further away than a smaller dovecote? It would still belong to the thing that's closer by, okay? And then they come up with the idea, Rab Uka says, that basically 50 amot is the dividing line, okay? And that 50 amot is as far as a chick can hop. So if you find it within 50 feet of a dovecote, so then that chick belongs to the person who owns the dovecote. If you find it more than 50 feet, it belongs to the person who found it, okay? Because it can't hop any further. It just can't. This is where Rabbi Yermiah comes in. Let me see. So you can all read this for yourselves. Okay, and you can see there is in English, and I'll read it to you in Hebrew. Let's see where it is. Okay, by Rabbi Yermiah, my cursor's on it, right? Raglo achat betoch 50 ama, raglo achat chutz me-50 ama, mahu. What's the situation when you have a chick that has a foot on one, that has a foot that's at before the 50 ama and one that's after the 50 ama? Ba'al da'af kuhu l'Rebbe Yermiah mi Beit Midrasha. For this question, they kicked him out of the Beit Medrash. So that's a really interesting thing. First of all, like your first instinct would be, does anybody have a first instinct about this? Let's see if I can see anybody. Speak up if you have one.
They were not amused, as your title.
They were not amused, but why, Stephen, would they not be amused? I mean, is this question such a crazy question in light of all the Gemara that you know?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Yes, it's kind of extreme, but is it the craziest? I don't know.
I mean, I think about the man jumping out of the window and the insemination and any of that kind of stuff, and I find other possibilities of crazier questions besides this one. But right, I mean, this is not out of the realm of possibility for the Gemara, or at least to talk about. It's not a reason. If you look at it at face value, it's not a reason that you would necessarily kick somebody out of the base medrash. So
is it possible that, I mean, he's constantly asking these kind of, difficult, annoying questions, and so this is just one of them?
Well, it's funny that you say the word annoying, okay? Because Rashi, actually, that's where he goes, which we'll get to it right now, actually. It is possible. I mean, anything's possible. But like my first instinct was, that's a weird reason to kick him out. I could think of other reasons, but this is a weird one. So Rashi over here, it says, Val dafkuhu, shahaya matriach aleim. He was just annoying them. He was annoying. So like, goodbye, right? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. So what he's saying, and this isn't a possibility, so why are you asking these questions, basically? Okay. Tosfot comes in, and they're cholek on Rashi. And they say, listen, it is not the issue. The issue is not that he thought of a outlandish question, that he thought of a question that really didn't have much possibility. Because we do this all the time in the Gemara, right? I mean, this is kind of what we do. We always talk about kind of uncommon situations. The issue here is, and I'll scroll down, what's the reason? Okay, over here. Mishum demadada eno madada klal yoter mi-50 ama. According to the Chachamim, if you're walking, if a chick is walking, it's not going to walk any more than 50 amma, according to the Chachamim. Afilu raglo achad, okay? Dechol midot Chachamim kainu. And all of the kind of the measurements of the Chachamim are exact like this. So what's the issue? If you look at what Tosfot is saying, he was calling into question kind of the whole halachic rubric. He was calling into question all, any of the measurements that they set up. It doesn't really matter whether it's a reality or whether it's not a reality. If they say it's a reality, we have to operate within that halachic system. And he, according to Tosfot, was actually pushing that envelope. He wasn't just being annoying. He was that's what he was doing. Now the coda for this is, don't worry, he actually comes back in the Beit Midrash later on, not for a different question. They ask him other questions, and there's a lot of discussion, a really interesting discussion, which actually, if I hadn't named this year about him and Rabbi Zeira, I kind of would have wanted to discuss more this issue, but that's for the next one. Okay, so Rabbi Yermiah then gets kicked out of the Beit Midrash for asking this question. So I want to go just a little bit further. Any questions about this? Okay. So let's see what the next thing is. So let's just talk a little bit about let's back it up and talk about Rabbi Zeira. So I mentioned to you that Rabbi Zeira is not specifically in this story, but he is mentioned earlier, and he is in the base medrash at the time. So, I'm kind of making the jump to say that he was among the people who thought you don't belong here. Okay? Okay, so there's a story in Brachot where they are talking about Tashlumin. Sorry, let me just get to my, okay. And again, we have a story of Rabbi Yermiah and Rabbi Zeira. So in Brachot Lamed Amud Bet, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yermiah and Rabbi Zeira, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ani ra'iti et Rabbi Yanai ditzali v'hadar tzali. I saw Rabbi Yanai davening, praying, and then praying again, okay? And in the notes here, it says that the first one was Shachar, the second one was Mincha, that was Tashlumin. He wasn't, okay, and that's what he was doing. So along comes Rabbi Yermiah, Amar le Rabbi Yermiah le Rabbi Zeira, the Dilmai mi'ikara lo kivein de'ate u'levasof kivein de'ate. Why are we assuming that he did Tashlumin? Maybe he didn't have Kavanah the first time, and the second time he did have Kavanah. Fair question. Amar le Chazi man gavaraba de kamas hayhed aleha. But what Rabbi Zeira says is, don't ask any of these questions. Look at the person who's giving you the agent and trust the person that's giving the agent. So it's a great man who's testifying against him. Testifying for him. So we just kind of take that. And the way I looked at this was in a similar vein. In other words, Rabbi Yermiah, there's a system here, and there are kind of luminaries within the system, and we're not supposed to be there. And there are certain rules that we have to operate within, and don't push that. So this kind of a question, though it might be a possibility for somebody else, it's not a possibility when you're dealing with these individuals. Comes along Rosh Hashanah, and we see something that's really mimicking what we saw with Rabbi Yermiah being kicked out of the Beit Midrash. Okay, and this, okay, sorry. Just gonna get it over here. Okay, B'kim lahu l'Rabban, okay, sorry, we're gonna go from Amar le Rabbi Yermiah, which is on the, okay. We're going to go on right over here. Amar le Rabbi Yermiah le Rabbi Zeira. B'kim lahu l'Rabbanan. Bein shlish lepachot mishlish. Amar le lav amin lecha lo tafik nafshech lebar mehilchata. Okay, so the question is like this. We'll read it in English. So the Chachamim had said that any grain that reaches a full growth, so that it's harvested on the festival of Sukkot, is known to have reached a third of its growth by Rosh Hashanah. And the Torah says that period between then and Sukkot is the end of the year. Rabbi Yermiah says to Rabbi Zeira, how do the Chachamim know? Are they able to absolutely discern between 1/3 of the growth of produce? Are they able to discern precisely between produce that has reached 1/3 of its growth and produce that has reached less than 1/3 of its growth? And Rabbi Zeira says, didn't I always tell you that you cannot take yourself out of the bounds of halacha? Okay, and then I didn't read the last part, which was kol midot chachamim kainhu. And if you remember from actually the Tosfot, that's what they said. The midot are just so. What the chachamim say within those bounds is how we understand them, and everything that the chachamim do is exact. So when I was looking at all of these things, and there are kind of more stories between Rabbi Yermiah and Rabbi Zeira, one way that we can look at this is that we have a Rebbe, we have a Talmud who's pushing the boundaries, and we have a Rebbe who's much more charif, and the two of them just, and there's just the kind of this push pull, and one is trying to keep the other person in, and you see the constant pushing. But there's but the Yerushalmi in Demai, which is the last thing that we're going to have over here, I think actually brings an interesting point up, which I kind of want to explore just a little bit. So the Yerushalmi tells the following story, and we could just read this in English. Rabbi Yermiah sent Rabbi Zeira one basket of figs that had not been fixed, meaning they had not had truma and masrot taken. Rabbi Yermiah thought it's not possible that Rabbi Zeira would eat anything that had not had truma or masrot given. Rabbi Zeira thought it can't be that Rabbi Yermiah would send me something that hasn't had truma and masrot taken. And then it says, Bein din ladin it achalt tevel. What happened was Rabbi Zeira actually ate tevel, which is tevel is fruit that has not had its truma or masrot taken. All right, so that's a really big deal, right? Eating tevel is a really big deal, especially for someone like Rabbi Zeira, who's, we've discussed who he is. And I think this actually brings up a really interesting piece, which is something that, if you will recall, we earlier talked about when I brought you the Aruch Laner, which was the bottom part over here. V'lazeh lo chash Rabbi Yermiah. Rabbi Yermiah just didn't have a chush, did not have an understanding of his Rebbe. He didn't understand that he wasn't going to laugh. He didn't understand his whole kind of way of looking at things. It wasn't about him pushing, it was about him not understanding. And similar, Rabbi Zeira very possibly didn't understand Rabbi Yermiah. He didn't understand that maybe he probably had other intentions, not just to push the envelope, but to look at a third possibility, and that could actually expand the understanding of halacha, right? And it wasn't lahachis; it was really to get to a larger understanding of halacha. And the two of them really kind of came to blows because one didn't understand the other. And in thinking about that, yeah.
Well, it just seems like from what you're showing, I think I buy the part where that the teacher doesn't, that he may not understand the student doesn't understand the teacher, that Rabbi Yermiah doesn't understand Rabbi Zeira. But it seems exactly that I think that Rabbi Zeira doesn't seem to know how to speak to Rabbi Yermiah to shut him down, because in the one example where he's kicked out, we really don't hear his voice. Like you said, you assume, but in the ones where he hears his voice, we don't see him leaving. We just see him to be able to somewhat say to him what he needs to hear in order to kind of keep it together. Meaning he's very harsh with him, but he shuts it down. Like he either shuts down his question or he says, like, this is the way you need to think about this.
Right. I mean, and the truth is that I forgot to read the end of this last thing, which you're free to read, which is basically Rabbi Yermiah says, I'm wrong. Forget about it. You've proven to me that the midot are a certain way, and I forget, and I'm wrong. Forget about it. Yes, but he doesn't allow for the opportunity for him to say, like, to even explore that. I mean, there is a third way to look at that chick thing, right? I mean, and it is possible that he wasn't trying to push the envelope. He was really trying to figure out kind of like, another what if. And he's just a different type of thinker. And though he was his Talmud of Rabbi Zeira, it's not so clear to me that the two of them were the best shidduch. And it's actually funny because I think it's Rabbi Yermiah who's one of the people with the, I think he's with the chavruta that one sharpens the other. I'm not 100% sure. Someone could check me.
Yoni?
Yes.
Do we know things about Rabbi Yermiah that point to like decisions made by him or things that people did follow that he said?
So I don't know enough about him. My research has not been expansive like that. There's not a lot of information. I know he's buried in Severia. There's not a ton of information about Rabbi Yermiah. There's a lot more information about Rabbi Zeira, and it's actually interesting. Chabad's all over Rabbi Zeira. I don't know why. If anybody has any suggestions about that. But I just want to kind of take back the idea of really knowing somebody and being able to kind of having a kind of a flexible and a sympathetic understanding of the other, which I think just from the charif, the kind of firebrand versus the levity, to me it feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel cute. It feels uncomfortable. But that's just a personal thing. And I'm thinking about kind of, well, first of all, our whole Corona world, but more than that, coming into Shavuot, and the idea of Megillat Ruth, which, as my Rabbi David Silber likes to say, is about like mensches and ubermensches. It's just about people who are regular and who are superhuman almost in terms of their chesed, and that there's no bad character in Megillat Ruth. And I think that speaks a lot to the ability to understand somebody else. In every single situation, you see that somebody is really reaching out and trying to understand the other in a way that I personally feel I could learn from. And I think that's something that, especially at this time in our lives, having been kind of in our own little bubble and experiencing our own kind of lives and ourselves, is something that might not be so easy for us to do when we reemerge. So kind of my bracha to everybody is that we get the opportunity to emulate those characters in Megillat Ruth. And I'm not saying that we don't have to emulate the Torah that Rabbi Yermiah and Rabbi Zeira have, but that idea of understanding the other, putting yourself in the other person's place, and really going out and helping the other person. It stands in sharp contrast to the stories that we have here. So anyway, welcome any questions. I hope I didn't speak too quickly. And I wish everybody a Chag Sameach if I don't see you, which I probably won't. Any questions?
Hi.
Hi, who's speaking?
Diane. It seems to me that if you irritate your teacher often enough with hair-splitting questions, they may be less open to listening to your valid opinions.
It could be, but I just feel like in the Gemara there's a lot of that. So I wonder why it happens with these two.
How often do they get thrown out of the Beit HaMikdash?
So there are a lot of people who do, very famous people, and it's almost it's like not a badge of honor, but people, the big guys get thrown out. I think with Tanur Vachnai, didn't someone get kicked out, or somebody else? I don't remember. There a lot of people get kicked out, but not a lot, enough. The Talmud scholars here could probably tell you better. And the fact is that he gets back.
Do they get kicked out over big issues or being irritating?
Issues, in my recollection.
So I find it interesting that that the issue that does seem to come up is this idea that as much as some of what's discussed in the Gemara seems outlandish and crazy and some really bizarre stories, that there's something about the questions and the way that Rav Yermiah, who's doing it, seems to be a pattern that's saying it, at least from Rav Zeira's perspective, but it seems broader than that he's outside the bounds. I mean, you said that, but I just think that there's something that I would love to understand that a little bit better. Like,
me too.
Like what makes it outside the bounds? It seems that there's something about, like, everybody has these general assumptions that he's supposed to have, but he doesn't get them. He doesn't get that these assumptions exist, and that you can ask crazy things, but these don't qualify.
Right. It's funny because I was thinking also just a little bit when I was, trying to figure out kind of where I was going to take this, and there are lots of ways I could go. I was thinking about the word, just how we use words, and how even with inflections, it changes how we speak, right? Or what it means. And I was actually thinking with Megillah Rut about the word zot, like hazot Naomi, as opposed to zot ha'pa'am, like the word this is, right? So when Naomi comes up, when Naomi comes back to Beit Lechem, everyone's like shocked and says, "Oh my gosh, is this the Naomi that we knew who was so regal?" That's the this over there. And then there's a this that's with Adam and Chava, right? Which is Zot HaPa'am, right? This is the woman. This is the thing that's going to be my forever, my spouse, my partner, right? And that's a different this. And then I was thinking about the Haggadah, which is when you have Mazot, what's this, right? And there's such nuance to the word, just this. And so it's possible that there was an inflection question here, and that the way just the manner in which it was asked, not the actual question, caused the problem.
Kenny was thinking sarcasm, like maybe there was something about it that, yeah.
Could be. I mean, we know that they seem to think he's funny, or he's making attempts at humor that might fall flat. Could be.
Yoni, I've never looked at them all together before, and seeing them like this laid out the way you laid them out, and with that Tosfot that you brought also for the one about the bird that fell out of the tree, it looks like several of them he is doubting, he's interpreted as doubting the wisdom of the sages, or whether everything they say is really true. And then in a few of them, he's not being careful about his Rebbe's observance of halacha. So
Mm-hmm.
that, on one hand, on their face, they seem like they're just, jokes or dumb questions, but that it's not just trying people's patience. It's they're reading it as he actually is stepping over a line.
They're definitely, yeah. And I never really thought about it as him not thinking about his Rebbe's observing of halacha. But when you put it that way, meaning I was, when he was trying to tell him lighten up, it's different when you put it in the frame of him not, the way that his Rebbe was looking at halacha. And I agree with you. There's definitely what to talk about Rabbi Yirmiyah's behavior. I was kind of trying to make it a little bit more even-handed, but it might not make sense.
Well, you and he both have my sympathy. I'm just trying to see how they were, reading him.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yoni?
Yeah?
You hear me?
I hear you, but I don't see
right,
you. But...
Okay. No, I don't want you to see me. I think this raises a very good pedagogic question, and I think there are a number of teachers participating. What do you do with the wise guy? How do you address and tone down the wise guy? You know, not as bad as the Rasha, but still giving the impression, at least, that he's not taking what the teacher is trying to teach seriously enough. Anybody?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know that the Russia is actually, I mean, in the Chumash isn't really the Russia, but
No, it's not.
paint him that way we paint him that way in the Haggadah. But yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think it would be interesting to overlay it actually with Pesach and the Haggadah in a more systematic way, and think about how do you deal with that, and how do you look at it, and what are and how much do you think about the intent, and how much do you just try to teach to it?
Let me just add, if I may, is this, I think another important question is, and I don't know, is this characteristic behavior on the part of Rav Yermiah? Or once in a while, somebody gets to be a smart aleck, okay. But if it's characteristic, then you have a problem.
It seems to be, from all the kind of the scholarly articles that I was reading in my not so long research about this, so I plead a little bit of ignorance here, that yes, it seems to be a pattern of behavior. This is not something, you know, this is what Rabbi Yermiah is known for, is his questions. But they're not always bad, and like I said, that he's sought after he gets kicked out.
I get it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyway, oh, sorry, there are SAP questions, but I didn't. Okay. Should I read the comments here? Shayna Summer. Well, Yoni said before regarding the teacher student. Okay, I'm sorry. Am I supposed to read this or just look at it? I don't know. I won't.
Everybody.
Anyway, everyone sees it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Anyway, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do some learning before Shavuos, and I look forward to seeing everybody, and everybody should just be happy and healthy.
Yeah, God willing. Thank you.
Thank you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Yoni.
Bye.
How do I get out?